What starts here changes the world. I have a few suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from basic SEAL training that hopefully will be of value to you as you move forward in life. Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students, 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day, your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CARES Project podcast. Today we are going to have a very interesting episode. People are talking about the need for accountability, and I was actually just at a meeting the other day, and they were actually talking about how much they need accountability for the government, for the vaccines, and everything else like that. And people need to start looking at the beginning of the pandemic response. Actually, let me start with a video that we've watched some before, just so that people can get the idea of what's going on. And we're going to go back to what happened with the transfer of the bioweapons or the pathogens from Winnipeg. But we need that to set the stage again, because Canada is cooked for what it did.
It's suspicious, it's alarming, it's frightening, it's perhaps life-threatening.
As an epidemiologist and law professor, Amir Adaran says new details obtained by CBC News about extremely dangerous viruses sent to China are a matter of grave concern.
There's nothing I can say concretely about it. There's plenty the federal government can say, and they need to.
It's been nearly 1 year since a federal scientist and her research team was evicted from Canada's only Level 4 lab in Winnipeg. We now know that happened 4 months after Zhengli sent a shipment of Ebola and Nipah viruses to the virology lab in Wuhan, China. Documents obtained through access to information tell us exactly what was sent. 30 vials of 15 different strains of Ebola and Nipah, some of the deadliest viruses in the world. The documents show there were concerns for months about where the viruses were going, from the head of the lab in Winnipeg to his bosses in Ottawa. The Public Health Agency of Canada says this shipment is not connected to the eviction 4 months later of Chu and her team. But it won't say what is at the root of that ongoing RCMP and internal investigation.
One of the leading reasons that China might want to have a large catalog of Ebola genetic material is because they're doing what's called gain-of-function experiments. And what that means are experiments that make the virus more dangerous or more deadly. The Wuhan lab does quite a lot of those experiments on different viruses. It's a sort of research that we don't do in Canada, that is frowned upon in most parts of the world, and the Chinese do quite a lot of it, and I'm afraid we may just have helped them.
Questions raised by this story have fueled conspiracy theories around the COVID-19 pandemic and the coronavirus responsible for it. There were no coronaviruses in the shipment sent to China, and the RCMP in Ottawa have repeatedly said there is no connection. Still, this expert says the vacuum of information is a problem.
Is this a serious problem, a minor problem, an administrative oversight, something more sinister? There's also a danger, if you don't provide information, that people will jump always to the worst conclusion.
No one from the lab, Health Canada, or the Public Health Agency of Canada were made available for interviews. And we've never been able to reach Zhengli for a comment. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Yeah, problem is, they're lying. They're lying. Just for everybody, this book, COVID-19 and Negligent Engineering Practices, Will This Kill People?, will explain a lot of the engineering controls, which demonstrate what they were doing was wrong. And on top of that, we're going to see some other things that were done absolutely wrong. You see, there was a control of a flow of information between the different agencies, and it's actually called stovepiping. Actually, General Flynn wanted to remove the stovepiping between the different intelligence agencies because he wrote some a paper about it after what was going on in Afghanistan and so forth. And this would allow different agencies to communicate with each other so they could do proper risk assessments and so forth. When you look at what happened during COVID, stovepiping happened everywhere. If that stovepiping was dealt with and it wasn't a thing and there was proper communication and proper risk assessments, impossible for what happened at COVID to happen. Stovepiping, biggest reason, because they were siloing information. The right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, and it was done so that the groundwork could be laid and nothing would be done effectively. Like, I mean, just the way that I look at this, almost possible for this to happen by chance. Too much cover was given for people. So, Dr. Shi Zhengli, which was working with Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance, were working on coronaviruses. And at the start of the outbreak, Dr. Shi Zhengli, and the team at Wuhan, they tested a bunch of patients, and then they put out a preliminary, paper, and then they put up the genetic profile for what was found from the novel coronavirus outbreak that they had. The problem is nobody actually, they used PCR tests, which wasn't designed to detect what was going on, and just rushed out things. And then a guy named Dr. Stephen Quay, he actually did the proper test, and some other people did it. But we're going to talk about Dr. Quay because he testified. So let's listen to what he had to say about what was going on at Wuhan. And please share this because people need to hear this, because people did not hear this information put together in the right parts because they had them split apart.
In December 2019, we performed a remote audit, forensic examination of the Wuhan Institute of Virology and found synthetic biology experiments with the Nipah virus. As the chart shows, they had created a cloning vector with a virus the US CDC defines as bioterrorism agent. Nipah virus is one of the deadliest on the planet with a greater than 60% lethality. Why were they conducting this experiment? I do not know. But a laboratory-acquired infection with this virus, if it became airborne, would make COVID-19 look like a walk in the park. The work of this committee is critical to protecting the American people as well as the people of all countries from future pandemics, man-made or natural. If we now fail to act with the knowledge we have, history will judge us poorly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Quay. Our final witness is Dr. Kevin Esfeld.
So, the Nipah virus, where he found that Nipah virus, and we'll look at some of the other clips, is in the work that was published by Dr. Shi Zhengli that was working with Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance on the coronaviruses. They were working on this situation in level 2 facility. And like he said, Nipah virus is a level 4 pathogen. That wasn't going to be maybe it will leak. It was going to be, it's going to leak, because you saw the woman walking around in the hazmat suit, basically full suit with separate respiration and so forth. That's level 4 containment. Wearing what I'm wearing, just put on a lab coat, some safety glasses, and use a biological cabin. That's level 2. So if you need to have a self-contained respiratory unit in order to be there and inside a full containment suit for level 4, but you're working on that pathogen under level 2 conditions, what do you think is going to happen? The CDC actually even has its own division that does some engineering. They do, with the NIH, they put out the biosafety for the different facilities, and they understand this. So does the NIH. The Public Health Agency of Canada has a division that looks after the biosafety as well. So each one of those agencies are aware of proper engineering controls. Every single one of them, because they all produce biosafety handbooks for the level 4 facilities in there. And they actually, the NIH has a division that does the construction and does research with engineers from ASHRAE and other places, and they have their own engineers on staff that are doing the research, talking about the same engineering controls that I was said should have been implemented during the pandemic response. On a risk assessment standpoint, it is insane to think that there is not a high degree of probability that there was something going wrong when every single one of those agencies had full knowledge of proper engineering controls, yet they did not use it. That makes them on a threshold liability that is beyond probable cause to investigate for criminal activity. Right? So why is it that we are letting these people escape? We should not let them escape. Anyway. Anything you want to say, Kaysha?
Nah.
This is Canada. This is Canada. So let's pull up some Mr. Peter Daszak and listen to his braggadocious self come back and talk about what is going on. And we're going to sit down and see what Peter Daszak is saying here. Oh, let's bring him back here.
I now recognize Ms. Maliatakis from New York for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Daszak, gain of function is broadly understood as a type of research that modifies a biological agent so that it confers new and enhanced activity to that agent. Does that describe any of the work that Wuhan conducted as far as you are knowledgeable?
That is not the definition of gain of function.
Okay, then what is your definition?
I don't have a personal definition.
Okay, but did you, well, then let me ask this question. Did any of the research that you funded through your organization at Wuhan Lab modify a virus to make it more infectious among humans? Yes or no?
No, that was not the goal of our work, and that's why it was not considered gain of function.
Okay, but in 2016...
Will the gentlelady suspend for just a moment?
Yes.
Under the rules of the House, the chairman is responsible for maintaining order and preserving decorum in the committee room. I expect audience members to be respectful of the witnesses, members, and public, and there should be no filming. I yield back.
In 2016, in an email to NIH, you said, "We are happy to hear that our gain-of-function research funding ban has, or prohibition has, a pause rather, has been lifted." So what gain-of-function therefore followed?
Well, they paused our research because of the gain-of-function pause. They lifted the pause on our research. That was the response I was...
Okay, so after that period of time, you did not fund any research that modified a virus to make more infectious among humans? Yes.
Eco Healthlines never has and did not do gain-of-function research by definition.
Are you aware of Wuhan Lab conducting that type of research?
No.
Okay. The State Department has indicated ties between Chinese military and WIV since 2017. You testified earlier that you were not aware of any type of military activity at the WIV.
I've never seen any. I've never seen any reliable reporting of any.
Okay. EcoHealth received tens of millions of dollars from the Defense Department. Did any of this money make its way to the WIV?
Not a single cent.
Okay. Did any scientific information derived with those funds make its way to the WIV?
The scientific information derived from the DTRA work that we do goes to DTRA and the American people.
Okay, and so no technology or anything obtained with the funds from the Department of Defense made its way to the WIV?
There is no connection between the WIV and the work we do with DTRA at all whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. Why did you choose to partner with the Wuhan Lab?
Well, if you want to work in a foreign country to find the next potential risk of a pandemic, you have to work with labs in those countries. We looked at labs across China. The WIV is the premier viral research in China.
Mm-hmm. And at no time were you concerned about subpar safety conditions at this particular lab?
No. In fact, it's got very good biosafety level.
Well, I mean, I think that could be disputed at this point.
Well, I've never seen any verifiable evidence or data that suggests otherwise.
Well, I think our intelligence community has shown that they've been operating.
No, I've never seen any
Okay.
verifiable or real data to suggest otherwise. Intelligence community reports behind the,
Okay.
the
I'd like to
security
turn
code,
to-
and I can't see those.
How much has the Eco Alliance received since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic in American tax dollars? From 2020 to today.
Our annual operating budget this year is about $16 million, so it's been about 4 years since the pandemic. So given the fluctuation in funding, approximately 4 times $15 or $16 million.
Okay. Now, colleagues on both sides of the aisle say that we want to prevent the next pandemic, yet EcoHealth is still receiving tens of millions of dollars to do risky...
To prevent the next pandemic?
Well, but
that's our goal. That's our mission. It's written into our mission.
Attempting to prevent the next pandemic, you could actually produce one. And
no.
What I want to, yes, absolutely,
no,
yes.
No, absolutely not. That's
okay.
That's not.
So although funding was stopped at EcoHealth's Alliance work on bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, your researchers are still doing research on bat coronaviruses in Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. Is that correct?
Yes. Not Myanmar. We're not allowed to work there yet because of political instability.
Okay. And are you doing experiments with bats and hamsters on the deadly brain swelling Nipah virus in Bangladesh?
I would have to check if we're doing experiments on that. We certainly have funding to work on Nipah virus. It's a very real threat globally and to the American people.
And are you infecting humanized mice with zoonotic viruses in Southeast Asia?
Not to my knowledge, but I would have to check.
And did you obtain $14 million in taxpayer funds to import bats from Asia to create a breeding colony here in the United States at the State University of Colorado?
We have a collaboration with CSU to conduct work on a really significant public health threat called Nipah virus.
Okay, and now you'll be infecting those bats with deadly viruses, including the Nipah and the Ebola. Are you aware that Colorado State University has had lab accidents in the past?
There will be no infection experiments, to my knowledge, with Nipah or Ebola at CSU. That will be done at a BSL-4 facility elsewhere.
Okay, I've run out of time. I'll yield back. Thank you.
Dr. Daszak, we're going
to... Wait a second. So they're also using university students to help them commit crime?
They have BSL labs at universities. They've got one in Texas.
They're getting university students to commit crime in the name of student projects.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no choice because it's you do this project or you fail. University is a scam, bro. They set you up for crime before you even make it into the world.
Yeah.
Crime and debt and slavery, bro.
Peter Daszak was lying through his teeth.
Yeah, he was.
And that doctor demonstrated that. He is a liar clean out of hell. There's no other way to put it because he was not telling the truth. And the doctor he was working with, Shi Zhengli, and the people at Wuhan, they were the ones who were actually dealing with this, and they put out the genetic profile of the infections that were infected from, and this was sequenced at Wuhan, and they knew it.
Yeah.
Nobody looked at it. They suppressed it. They voted, actually, by a show of hands, that the lab leak was not good, because they sent in the WHO, and the only American in that international crew was, guess who?
Peter Daszak.
Exactly. And it was a huge conflict of interest because he was the one who was doing gain of function, and then they had that it maybe came from bats, maybe it jumped into species, and then there was the lab leak and there was another one. But they all, by a show of hands, said, no, lab leak is not really going to be an issue, and we shouldn't look into it any further. That's how they decided that was going to be. And a bunch of those scientists reported back to the CCP. So what are you going to do? Sit down in front of the CCP and say, no, lab leak is good? Guess what? Like they said, people disappear.
Yeah.
Right? This is the CCP we're talking about. And so this is the situation. Like I sit down and say, everybody please share this information, because this people need to see. This is what people need to know and understand, because what these people are doing are absolutely criminal. And there was actually a peer-reviewed study that showed that there was contamination. They didn't specifically name the Nipah virus, but what they did was they corroborated what Dr. Quay said, because nobody wants to peer review his stuff, because if they do, people are going to jail.
Yeah.
So let's bring back Dr. Quay, right? He's got more good stuff to say.
Finally, Dr. Quay recently presented testimony to lawmakers as a part of an expert forum convened by the House Select Committee on Coronavirus titled Led by Science, the COVID-19 Origin Story. Dr. Quay?
Thank you. I'm honored to participate with my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Nipah, in this forum titled Revisiting Gain-of-Function Research, What the Pandemic Taught Us, and Where Do We Go From Here? I offer 6 statements in opening. Very good. I offer 6 statements in opening. 1, there is no dispositive evidence the pandemic began as a spillover of a natural virus in a market. All evidence is consistent with a laboratory-acquired infection. I do understand this conclusion is not widely held, and I could spend an entire hearing painstakingly going through the scientific evidence for this conclusion, but that's not the purpose of today's meeting. I'm happy to discuss the evidence contained in my written remarks during questioning. I'm also willing to publicly debate any virologist on this question at any time or place. Only one infectious disease doctor was willing to debate this question with me last year in a formal debate format, and he lost. I'm also willing to testify under oath if requested. Number 2, all evidence is consistent with an accidental and not a deliberate release. Number 3, SARS-2 has features consistent with synthetic biology gain-of-function research. 2 features involve acceptable academic gain-of-function research: the receptor binding domain optimization and the furin cleavage site. These 2 features have never been found in nature in related viruses that could have reasonably started the pandemic because of the closeness of these viruses to Wuhan. These 2 features are, on the other hand, routinely engineered into viruses. In 2018, U.S. and WIV scientists proposed inserting, quote, human-specific furin cleavage sites in a bat virus backbone. 2 years later, SARS-2 appeared on the WIV doorstep. SARS-2 is a bat-derived virus with a human-specific furin cleavage site. One region of SARS-2, called ORF8, has features of forbidden gain-of-function research, asymptomatic transmission, and immune system evasion. The WIV was engineering a protein related to ORF8 to have these 2 forbidden properties before 2019, as shown in 2 master's degree theses available only in Chinese. COVID exhibits 40% asymptomatic transmission, unheard of for a new respiratory virus. Patients infected with an acquired deletion of ORF8 have a milder infection. Could the reduced efficacy of vaccines and natural immunity be an engineered feature? It appears likely. 6, in December 2019, the Wuhan Institute of Virology was conducting synthetic biology research on the Nipah virus, which is 60% lethal in low-containment BLSA 2-3 facilities. The Nipah virus was in an infectious clone format. Nipah is a BLSA 4-level pathogen and a CDC-designated bioterrorism agent. This is the most dangerous gain-of-function research I have ever encountered. We should assume this research continues to this day at the WIV.
They should have had this man testifying at the parliamentary hearings on what happened at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg. Because had they found out that in December of 2019 that they were doing this gain-of-function research on the Nipah virus, specifically the Bangladesh strain of the Nipah virus, who they only got from Winnipeg, there would be problems. Also, they never consider bioterrorism because if the Public Health Agency of Canada should have disclosed the transfer of those biological weapons to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and now you have a pathogen that is coming out of China. They had an obligation to do so. They also had an obligation to start issuing proper engineering controls as part of the pandemic response before jumping straight to the Quarantine Act. Because the Public Health Agency of Canada cannot declare a state of emergency. They can't start a pandemic. They don't have the authority because in Canada, the provinces run healthcare. But when they operated and ordered the Quarantine Act, they started a de facto state of emergency. They were the first to take an action. Then the provinces followed suit after the Public Health Agency of Canada said, we're going to start quarantining you the moment you step foot in the country. And in all these other situations, what were under federal jurisdiction. And then you watch different provinces put up their public health acts and so forth. They have a huge problem because they're well aware of engineering controls. Everyone's systematically removing engineering controls when coronaviruses and things like Nipah virus spread through aerosols. This is extremely problematic because it doesn't matter whether this is intentional or not, it is criminal, and there's no escaping the criminal liability for every one of those people, because this is not policy failure, this is how you kill people. These people run these BSL-4 labs, know that engineering controls are necessary for them not to kill people. They also know that for pandemic responses that engineering controls are going to be used, and then they magically just forget. Sorry, doesn't work that way, because that's 80% of your mitigation of an airborne pathogen. And when you do a pandemic response, you are supposed to assume bioterrorism until it can be ruled out. Did they ever rule it out? No, they did not. So when they did that faulty response off the jump, in Canada, zero chance of having any Section 1 limits that they were using to justify everything COVID. This is why they came down with the hammer on the engineering controls, because they would instantly lose every leg that they had to stand on, and everything would become criminal. And then on top of the fact that they were caught and they were arrogant enough to put up the entire genetic profile of what they were doing, what we were infected with, and then this man went ahead and there was another. Don't worry, you'll be seeing more of this week because I'm going to be dropping this out like mad. This is what Canada's involved in. And because these agencies, they were all working and sending places together. Like, I mean, you had the United States agencies funding Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance and so forth. And you had, you look at the GAO report, and yes, military money went to China. And you watch all that flow of money, and then you had up here in Canada, you were sending the flow of materials, and you're seeing people from all over the place. Yeah, and guess where Dr. Shi Zhengli was trained? France. Guess who helped build the Wuhan lab? France. Guess who was helping the Wuhan lab? Because they were having containment issues, because the NIH, their Office of Research Facilities, and then there was out of the University of Texas, I believe, they had some personnel helping them to get it up to snuff, because they were having issues. Their technology is not good. They built it, I mean, in China, it's knockoff central, right? So when Peter Daszak is like, oh no, everything is fine, you're lying. And then you see in those patients, you had some issues because you had Nipah virus, and then they had something that they were saying, asking if there was a flu vaccine that they were working on, because the flu was 6 times greater than the coronavirus. So it sounds like they were making chimeric viruses. And then they had pieces of the honey sickle cell that they generally use to start forming these RNAs. They use cells to create that stuff. And they had the cells that they were using that they would normally clone these genetic sequences. So everything's screaming gain of function. And they're like, no, we're not doing gain of function. Liar. Yeah. Anything you want to say?
Not really. I don't really know what to say.
No, we'll just take a short pause here and put a call to action, because we put a lot of this information that we're talking about tonight, we put this in the Alberta petition for redress of grievances, because the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Alberta and in Saskatchewan and in multiple places, they are concealing this evidence, and they're refusing to deal with this because they have an obligation to go ahead and to deal with this. And this is why they don't want to take information from me, because the engineering controls, and then this on top of it, that is beyond the threshold for criminal investigations, and they know it. And I handed this information to the Attorney General of Alberta in his hands, because that study by Dr. Stephen
Quay.
Yes, Stephen Quay, it's in there along with my engineering report. Right? The RCMP got this at nauseum, and they had more than probable cause, because the pathogens that were sent over, they're, lo and behold, they're in something else. So we'll take a short break, and we're asked people, if you want to support, you can go to mypillow.com/the CARES Project, or you could go to the donor box or the Gifts and Go and support it that way. We have a lot of links in the description on Facebook, Rumble, or BitChute. Or if you're watching on Vocal, please hit the support on the CARES Project if you'd like to support us. And we're going to play a little interview here.
Hello friends, my name is Kaysha, and I'm a proud member of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. And I'm also a survivor of human trafficking. My trafficking began in Saskatchewan, moved into Alberta, and even crossed into the United States. I was stalked, hunted, and ignored by the very systems over the last 5 years that were meant to protect me. This is why, with my father Dale Richardson, we started the CARES Project. This is an Indigenous, survivor-led movement for humanity dedicated to exposing trafficking, government corruption, and holding institutions accountable. One of the most powerful tools that we are using is the petitions for redress of grievances. These are lawful constitutional actions rooted in Canadian and US law, and in treaties that tie us together across provinces, across states, and even across borders. These petitions are precedent-setting. They create a binding record. They demand accountability while representing reconciliation in action. Indigenous and non-Indigenous people working side by side to preserve liberty for all. But we cannot do this alone. We need your help to keep this movement alive, to raise awareness and to build a legacy of justice for Indigenous women, for trafficking survivors, and for families everywhere. Thank you. Please stand with us. Your support makes this work possible. Together we can restore justice, heal families, and defend freedom. And I will close with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole. And men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and we're back. We're gonna pull up some of a little bit to remind people here. We're gonna go through a couple of clips and we'll call it a night, and we'll be picking it up more tomorrow. But these are things that Mr. Justin Trudeau made sure that he shielded himself from, and had all of these things brought to light. The RCMP would have no choice but to go and arrest him, or they would look like completely involved in that, and that would give other countries license to come in and have their way with this country. But let's listen to what Polyev was saying, because now Dr. Quay, Stephen Quay, confirmed what he said.
We already knew that Justin Trudeau was not worth the cost, the crime, the corruption, and the cover-up. But now we know that he cannot protect our people or our country. We just received these documents that Trudeau has been covering up for years. Documents related to a massive security breach at the Trudeau government's most sensitive laboratory, where the most dangerous viruses and pathogens are studied and handled. We have learned that the Trudeau government's head of pathogens was collaborating with members of Beijing's People's Liberation Army, who are responsible for bioweapons and bioterrorism. We know now that a People's Liberation Army official was able to gain personal access, walk in the door, look at computers, and have access to all of our most important virological secrets. If you think any of this is hyperbole, read the report yourself. This is from government documents, the Trudeau government's own documents. It says here on page 142, Winnipeg lab scientist Dr. Chu is head of the Special Pathogens Unit, the top person in that job. According to documents on page 242, quote, represents a serious and credible danger to the Government of Canada as a whole, and in particular at facilities considered high security due to the potential for theft of dangerous materials attractive to terrorists and foreign entities that conduct espionage to infiltrate and damage the economic security of Canada, end quote. It states further on page 239, investigators assess that Dr. Chu communicated with foreign entities during her trips to China. The evidence obtained from interviews and from information collected from the electronic content of her devices reveal that this is indeed the case. As a subject matter expert with access to sensitive information and dangerous materials, Dr. Chu presents a realistic and credible threat to Canada's economic security when conducting repeated and clandestine meetings with foreign entities, end quote. Then it says Dr. Chu conducted joint research with the Major General Chen Wei of the People's Liberation Army, who, according to page 236, is a noted top virologist at the Academy of Military Medical Sciences and is China's chief biological defense expert engaged in research related to biosafety, biodefense, and bioterrorism. Bioterrorism, end quote. And these are documents, this is right out of the government's own documents. Trudeau, what did he do when he found out about this? Did he immediately inform Canadians of the breach? Did he fire anybody? No, no one was fired. Did he call an inquiry to get to the bottom of it? No, he didn't do that either. Instead, he covered it all up. He defied 4 parliamentary orders to release these documents. When the Speaker tried to get them, he sued the Speaker to cover this up. He said it was all for national security, but now we know from a committee composed of 4 members of Parliament, including 1 Liberal, and 3 judges, and I quote, the information appears to be mostly about protecting the organization from embarrassment for failures in policy and implementation, not legitimate national security concerns, and its release is essential to hold the government to account. In other words, there was no national security reason why we couldn't have had this before. It was only because Trudeau didn't want the embarrassment before an election. So what did he do then? He collaborated, knowing this, he collaborated with Beijing to buy a vaccine for COVID. Could you imagine if the deal that Trudeau wanted to sign with Beijing had gone ahead and we had procured China-made vaccines after learning this information? That's what was in this guy's head. And if you think for a minute, because I know there'll be all kinds of excuses, well, he's not responsible and how could he possibly take ownership of what happens in his government. Let me quote him. He has a document called Open and Accountable Government. And I quote, "As head of government, the Prime Minister has special responsibilities for national security," end quote. It's his responsibility. This is his government's lab. It's not a random university lab. It's the top lab for the Prime Minister's public health agency. And he is exclusively responsible for the machinery of government as Prime Minister of the country. So this is on Justin Trudeau. I will add one last thing. Not only did he cover it up, not only did he try to get a vaccine from China after knowing this, he called a snap election to make sure that the voting would happen before this came out. And what happened in that election? Beijing interfered to help him win it. This is a man who says he admires China's basic communist dictatorship. We cannot trust Justin Trudeau to keep our people and its country safe.
And now we know from the testimony of Dr. Quay that Bangladesh strain of Nipah virus turned up in patients and it was being cloned. This was done through gain of function genetic experiments that were unauthorized using a level 4 pathogen, and it was mingled with influenza and mingled with coronavirus. And this genetic profile was put out by Dr. Zhengli, Shi Zhengli. Like, this is, you see that stack of papers that he had about what was going on in the biolab? On May 24th, they requested that information as to what went on. Guess who got that information in her hands in person? Lauren Boebert. My daughter, Kaysha, gave that information to Lauren Boebert. Did she send it over? Also gave the engineering report. Did that make it into the hearings? Knowing that they suppressed the engineering report from the CDC, the Public Health Agency in Canada, and everybody did it? No? Because you can't, everything falls flat when they were directing people using faulty evidence. There is no way on God's green earth do any of that stand. Engineering was the first step, and its systematic removal is criminal. Doesn't matter whether it's incompetence or deliberate intent, you are still criminally liable for this. And this is why all the people wanting to go after vaccines and all that kind of stuff, I don't know why they're not taking the engineering, because the engineering makes everything criminal from start to finish, including the orders for the vaccines. It's all cruel and unusual punishment, all that sort of stuff. That's the way things are done. When it's crime from its inception, the whole thing is tainted. When I go and I talk to people that understand what's going on, they get nervous. They get very nervous and they get very scared. And you can see it in their faces. Because they know what it means. This is why me and my daughter are being treated the way that we have. Because everybody gets caught. People didn't take what we took because we came here to bring the truth. No matter the cost. I don't see anybody else doing this in this level. Like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of targets on chests, and just like they did the stovepiping, this is how they restrict our information. We get siloed, and they control where it goes and who sees it, and they have all the people to make sure that it gets nowhere. Why? Because they want people to die. They don't want accountability, and this is where the accountability lies. And all the people who would be benefiting from it, people are literally fighting for themselves to die. Right? This is why I'm saying to people, share this information. Because this information, people need to hear it. They need to understand that there is accountability and criminal accountability. This isn't just charter violation. This is criminal investigation. And they've had it for a long time. And the people need to get up and do something about it. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. Never, ever will it happen. I'm going to bring up another clip here just before we get going, because we have to close up here really quickly. Because everybody was keeping all of the pieces of the puzzle away from each other, so that people could sit down and say, oh, well, it was just this and it was that. No, you need to put all of this together so that everybody can see. Let's look at this clip here.
You know, we've been looking 1 year later since the emergence of the pandemic and it hit the world, and a lot of questions about where it all started in Wuhan, China. Now, the Chinese have been slow to respond to the World Health Organization trying to get an idea how it first evolved, and apparently they're not responding to even the most intense pressure to at least help who get some answers. And enter the United States now demanding that before we can move forward. Jennifer Griffin with the latest on how that is going. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Neil. Well, this has really been a 14-month cover-up by the Chinese Communist Party. 1 year after the WHO finally declared COVID-19 a pandemic, U.S. officials still do not have a clear picture of how the virus originated. So I reached out to the State Department's former lead investigator into the virus origin. David Asher told me he believes the virus could have come from research being done on a bioweapon from the lab in Wuhan.
First, that the Wuhan Institute of Virology is not the National Institute of Health. It was operating a secret or classified program. In my view, and I'm just one person, my view is it was a biological weapons program.
Asher has spent a career leading investigations that uncovered secret nuclear weapons programs in Pakistan and North Korea. At first, China said the virus originated in the Wuhan seafood market. But the problem with China's theory, the first case had no connection to the market. Last fall, the U.S. obtained intelligence that indicates there was an outbreak among several Wuhan lab scientists with flu-like symptoms that left them hospitalized in November of 2019, before China reported its first case. Asher and other experts who spoke today at the Hudson Institute say that in 2007, China announced it would begin work on genetic bioweapons, and basically that China has entered a biowarfare era where they take viruses and make them more lethal. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo came to the following conclusion.
There were certain facts that make it strongly indicative that this came out of that laboratory through what was likely an accidental leak. The Chinese Communist Party won't let anybody into that lab to look at what happened. They disappeared journalists. They made doctors who knew what happened go away. That cover-up itself is a crime.
The WHO team that recently visited Wuhan was barred from key data from the Wuhan lab that could help them better understand the virus origin. Neil?
Jennifer Griffin, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So that there it is, right? All of these people are saying that this is biological weapon. Biological weapon. They're demonstrating that it's biological weapon. And I'm just going to give you this one last time so that you can hear this before we close, so that you can hear it from the man himself, so that you understand, and then I will close with a prayer, and then give you your final thoughts, Kaysha, so that we can just get out of here. But there you go. You're going to hear it from him again on what
He's currently an
exactly
assistant
is.
professor at
In December 2019, we performed a remote audit, forensic examination of the Wuhan Institute of Virology and found synthetic biology experiments with the Nipah virus. As the chart shows, they had created a cloning vector with a virus the U.S. CDC defines as bioterrorism agent. Nipah virus is one of the deadliest on the planet with a greater than 60% lethality. Why were they conducting this experiment? I do not know. But a laboratory-acquired infection with this virus, if it became airborne, would make COVID-19 look like a walk in the park. The work of this committee is critical to protecting the American people as well as the people of all countries from future pandemics, man-made or natural. If we now fail to act with the knowledge we have, history will judge us poorly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
There you go. Nipah virus. Bangladesh strain of Nipah virus found in the patients that they were tested that were infected from the spike protein sequenced at Wuhan. That the only place that they had recorded that had sent over the Bangladesh strain of the Nipah virus was when it came from Dr. Chu from Winnipeg, the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg, and got sent over to Wuhan. That is where it's at. This is reason to investigate criminally. The engineering controls and the fact that that is there, that is the gun and the bullets. Now you investigate, and that's really it. I'm going to close here with a prayer because we need people to stand up and get up and do something and not just sit down there and let a government that is from what it looks like on the surface engaging in supply biological weapons program with a hostile nation, and then had people from the People's Liberation Army standing inside there looking at the sensitive information. Those people should be prosecuted. They should not be walking free. Anyway, I'll close here with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. I ask of you this day to, Lord, help us that we would turn away from our wickedness as a people and our apathy. And Father, I ask of you this day to help the men that they would submit themselves before God and that they would, Lord, turn their hearts back to Jesus and ask for the courage and the strength to move forward. And that the men and the women can come together to rebuild our families, our churches, our community, our nation. And Lord, that we would get some justice from this wickedness that we're seeing here is my prayer. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, I'm really disturbed with how much this is going on and people just don't do anything about it. Everybody lies and nobody tells the truth and nobody's interested in the truth. Everyone's a coward. Yeah, that's the conclusion I've come to. Everybody's a coward. So, yeah, do with the information what you will. You guys probably won't do anything with it anyways. But for the good people out there, yeah, share it. And yeah, whatever. Anyways, we'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao.